The summer stated meeting of the Presbytery of West Virginia will be held on Thursday, August 19th at Bree Memorial Presbyterian Church in Charleston, beginning at 10 a.m. I'm Susan Sharp Campbell, Associate for Educational Ministry, and this video is intended to provide an overview of and orientation to the work that we will be about on the 19th. It is not intended to replace a thorough reading of the advanced packet of materials that has been sent to those who have registered or can be downloaded at www.wvpresbytery.org. If you haven't already downloaded the packet, you might want to do so now so that you can follow along as I go through it. Please note that throughout the meeting, masks will be required. Please also remember that masks should be worn correctly so that they cover your mouth and your nose. We will also be observing social distancing throughout the meeting. Before we get to the specifics of the meeting, there are a few things you need to do before you leave home. It is somewhat late to register for the meeting, but if you haven't done so, please contact the Presbytery office at 304-744-7634 or email office@wvpresbytery.org as soon as possible. You will need to download the Presbytery meeting packet onto your phone, tablet, or computer before arriving, as Wi-Fi will not be available during the meeting. If you would like a printed packet, one will be provided for you if you make your request by phone or email no later than Tuesday, August 17th at 5 p.m. At each meeting of the Presbytery, we are partnering with the host church on a mission project. For this meeting, Bree Memorial has requested non-perishable canned meats and proteins with a pop-top lid for its food pantry. The morning will begin with registration and refreshments at 9 a.m. When you arrive, signs will direct you to the registration table where you will pick up your name tag, and to the table where you can pay for lunch if you have not already done so. At 10 a.m., moderator Nancy Kissinger will call the meeting to order in the sanctuary. In addition to the moderator, other persons to note during the meeting are Ed Thompson, our General Presbyter, and Maureen Wright, our stated clerk. Together, they will help to ensure that the meeting runs smoothly. Please note that any time you wish to speak during the meeting, including the good news from the pews, you will need to go to the microphone and wait to be called on by the moderator to do so. Please also remember that you should address the moderator as you speak, not those in the pews, for it's a matter of respect and courtesy for the office of the moderator. Now to look at the advanced packet of materials for this meeting, which I hope you've downloaded. There are 3 sections to the packet. The first contains the docket with committee reports. The second is the worship bulletin. And the third contains flyers with information on upcoming events in the Presbytery. In this video, I intend to hit the highlights, but again, please read the entire packet before the meeting so as to be prepared for the work of the Presbytery and the business we will be conducting. It is important to come informed, but please remember it's also important to come with hearts and minds open to the leading of the Spirit as we meet. As Presbyterians who meet in councils to make decisions together, we trust that as we meet, the Spirit moves among us, helping us to discern together where God is leading us. On pages 1 and 2 of the advanced packet, you will find the proposed docket for the meeting. Those items marked with an asterisk indicate orders of the day, meaning at those times we will move the item indicated, even if it means that we postpone the issue currently in discussion until a later time in the day. After the meeting is called to order, Don Adamy, pastor of Bree Memorial, will bring greetings and share necessary information about the facilities. We will then, on recommendation from the Committee on Representation, elect a recording clerk. As with other nominations, there will be the opportunity for someone to be nominated from the floor, though please be aware that any person must have agreed in advance to serve if elected. The business part of the morning's docket will include welcoming new ministers, Bill Myers, pastor of First Presbyterian Church, Charleston, and Christy Moore, pastor at Edgewood Presbyterian Church in Lewisburg. Next will be the seating of new corresponding members. These are ministers who are laboring within our boundaries as minister members of other presbyteries. Then we will also recognize ruling elders who are attending this meeting as the first time they've been a ruling elder commissioner. Once a quorum is declared present, Quorum is 15% of ministers of word and sacrament, or 17, and 15% of our churches represented by a ruling elder, or 18. We will vote to amend or approve the docket. Temporary clerks will then be appointed by the moderator. Temporary clerks will hand out any materials needed during the meeting and count any votes other than voice votes. Members of the Presbytery's leadership team who are present will be appointed to be the standing committee on bills and overtures. They will review any new business that is proposed to come before the Presbytery and make recommendations. It's important to note that any items of new business must be submitted in writing to the stated clerk prior to the lunch break in order to be considered at this meeting. Next, we will consider and vote on the consent agenda. These are items that will be voted on with a single recommendation unless someone asks that any one or more items be removed to be discussed. Being on the consent agenda doesn't mean something isn't important. It simply means that those planning this meeting don't anticipate that it will generate discussion. If there is an item you would like to discuss or hear about more, however, you simply have to ask that it be removed and it will be taken up during the appropriate committee report. Items on the consent agenda for this meeting include approval of requests for excused absences, that the offering be given to Cabway Lingo Chapel for flood relief and alleviating hunger, authorizing an authorized lay preacher to preside at communion in 2020, and approval of Tays Valley Presbyterian Church's request to be authorized to sell property. Next, we will join in a time of worship. In light of concerns about COVID, please note that we will not be singing the hymns and that there are no congregational responses. You're invited to hum or silently reflect on the hymns as they are sung. For some, it may seem as though we are spectators of worship, though this is certainly not what is intended. I encourage you to listen to the words that are spoken, the word that is read and proclaimed, and the meal that is shared, that our worship may be pleasing to God. You will find the worship after the evaluation form for the meeting. Worship will be led by a number of different people, and you'll find their names listed at the end of the worship materials, along with the resources that were used in the preparation of worship. The preacher will be Cindy Coleman, the connectional presbyter and stated clerk for Newcastle Presbytery, and co-moderator of the 223rd General Assembly. Again, you're asked to remember we will not be singing the hymns. Following worship, Nellie Howard, Resource Center Director, will be sharing new resources that are available to be checked out from the Resource Center. She will also have a Resource Center display with other resources that can be checked out during the meeting. Cindy Coleman will lead us in our educational focus, Why We Are Discussing Racism in Church, a presentation on implicit bias. Lunch will be boxed lunches. Once you've picked up your box, there'll be different places to eat, including outside as long as the weather permits, so as to maintain social distancing. After lunch, we will gather back in the sanctuary. After prayer by the moderator, ministers who have begun service in the presbytery since March 2020 will be asked to sign the Book of Obligations, signifying that they affirm the questions answered at their ordination are an exhibition of their faith and principles, and that they promise to engage in ministry in conformity to them. The first report after lunch will be that of stated clerk Maureen Wright. Her written report can be found on pages 4 to 6. It includes information about correspondence that she has received and referred. The recommendation concerning excused absence will likely have been approved on the consent agenda. Other recommendations included in the stated clerk's report will be to ratify, that is, to give final approval to actions that have been taken at Zoom presbytery meetings. This is necessary since prior to COVID, the Presbytery Manual did not include a provision for online presbytery meetings. In addition to a general blanket recommendation to ratify actions taken since our last in-person meeting, there'll be several specific items to be ratified. You will find other items of information, including dates for session record review this year, at the conclusion of the stated clerk report. As we join in the work of the presbytery, the procedural matters found on page 7 will guide us. These include principles of parliamentary law, courtesy to all, one item at a time, majority rule, respect the rights of the minority, justice for all, and partiality for none. These guide us in how to work and play well and respectfully with others as we meet together. As items are discussed, pro and con speakers will alternate, with individuals identifying the position they support. When one person has spoken on a pending question, all others wishing to speak will be heard before that person can speak a second time. It takes special permission for anyone to speak on the same question more than twice. On this page, you will also find provisions from the Presbytery manual that guide us, including who has the ability to speak, that is, voice at this meeting, and who has the ability to speak and to vote. In the final section of page 7, you will find procedural rules we follow. These include everyone speaking for whatever reason needs to go to a microphone, and when called on by the moderator, to share their name, church, or relationship with the presbytery. Please don't assume that everyone can hear you from where you sit, or that everyone knows who you are. Here you will find that the limitation for debating any motion is 30 minutes per main motion, with each speaker limited to 3 minutes per speech, although this must be approved by 2/3 of those voting on the 19th. As you read the packet, if you see an item you feel called to speak to, you may want to go ahead and write your remarks out to help keep you focused and able to use your time wisely. General Presbyter Ed Thompson's report is next. You will find his written report on pages 9 to 12, in which he looks towards some of the changes the Financial Sustainability Task Force has recommended to the leadership team. You will also find here a report of his work during May, June, and July of this year. As we move into the work of committees, you will notice that most written reports have 2 parts. The first contains recommendations that we will be voting on at this meeting. The other contains ongoing information about the ongoing work of the committee. The written report of the leadership team can be found on pages 13 to 18. One of the responsibilities of the leadership team is to nominate members of the Presbytery's Committee on Representation, which serves as our nominating committee, so that they won't be nominating their own members. You will note in item number 5 under information that the Financial Sustainability Task Force has provided its final report to the leadership team. This report can be found on pages 15 to 18. There you will find their recommendations for staffing, selling the Presbytery office building, and making changes regarding Bluestone Camp and Conference Center as we move into the future. The Committee on Representation will be bringing several recommendations of persons to serve the Presbytery, in a variety of ways, including as recording clerk, chair of leadership team, and committee members. Again, there will be opportunity to nominate from the floor, although anyone nominated for any position must have agreed in advance to serve if elected. The final recommendation is to suspend the usual process for nominating commissioners and a young adult advisory delegate to the 225th General Assembly, which will be held in person and on Zoom next summer. Instead, the recommendation is that we re-elect the commissioners from the 224th General Assembly in 2020, in light of the fact that it was held entirely on Zoom. You will see the rationale following the recommendation. The Stewardship Committee will be presenting the proposed budget for 2022 with the recommendation to approve it. You will find their report beginning on page 21. The proposed budget can be found on pages 22 to 24. Pages 25 to 31 contain financial information as of the second quarter of 2021. The report on per capita and shared mission giving through the second quarter is on pages 32 to 34. The final pages of financial information, that is 35 to 37, contains information related to Bluestone and Friends of Bluestone. Good news from the pews will be next. You will note on the docket that this is a time for ruling elders and ruling elders only to share some of the good things happening in their congregations. The intent is that as elders share about how their congregations are engaged in ministry and mission, those from other churches might glean some ideas to take back to their sessions or congregations. If you are your session's ruling elder commissioner for this meeting and would like to share, please be prepared to do so. And again, be sure to direct your remarks to the moderator using the microphone. Please note that Good News from the Pews is not meant to be a time to advertise upcoming events. The report of the Committee on Ministry can be found on pages 38 to 48 with 2 recommendations. The first recommendation is that the minimum compensation for ministers of word and sacrament and certified Christian educators be increased by 2.5%. The second is the appointment of an administrative commission to inquire about the life and ministry of Keller Memorial Presbyterian Church. You will find the responsibilities of this commission listed as part of the recommendation. The ongoing work of the committee includes appointing moderators in churches without pastors, appointing mentors for new pastoral leaders, reviewing terms of call for installed pastors, planning for the small church conference on September 18th, approving the terms and matches for calls of ministers of word and sacrament newly serving churches in the presbytery, and approving matches in terms of call for ruling elders commissioned to particular service. There's also much more information under that section. On pages 44 to 48, you will find first Bill Myers' autobiographical statement and statement of faith, and then Christy Moore's statements. Following the report of the committee, Terry Layton, Jay Nunley, and Emmett Rogers will be commissioned as ruling elders to serve as commissioned pastors. The recommendation of the Mission Committee that the offering at this meeting be given to Cabway Lingo Chapel, an outreach of First Presbyterian Church, Huntington, will most likely have been approved on the consent agenda. If you'd like to know more about this ministry, click on the link to the article by the Synod that's found on page 49. In the information section, you will find the schedule of the 4th Thursday Mission lunchtime speakers for the next 3 months. You will also find their projected schedule of visits with and to Neary Presbytery and for international peacemakers. On page 50 of the advanced packet is the Bluestone Committee report. Sarah Specht, Program Director of Bluestone, will share about this summer's camping experience. You'll also find information there about how they now have RV spaces available for rent. The Vocations Committee report can be found on page 51. While the recommendation for an authorized lay preacher to be approved to preside at communion is part of the consent agenda, you will find information here on the committee's ongoing work with inquirers and candidates, their examinations of ruling elders seeking to serve as commissioned pastors. The Authorized Lay Preacher Commissioned Pastor Preparation Program is undergoing revisions with the intent of making it more accessible. A new program will begin in January 22 with Presby Prep courses, which will all be held on Zoom. More complete information will be available in late September, early October. The report of the trustees of the presbytery can be found on page 52. Again, the recommendation regarding the sale of Tays Valley's property is on the consent agenda. You will note in the information section that the trustees are reviewing the presbytery's insurance and looking into the Presbyterian Investment and Loan Program's outstanding mortgage grants. You will also note here that Amy Robinson, our office administrator, is now a notary public. Several committees will have only written reports for this meeting, although that doesn't mean their work is less important. On page 54, you will find in the report of the Administration Committee that it has reviewed the report of the Financial Sustainability Task Force and recommended budgeted amounts accordingly. The Nurtures Committee's report is on page 55. It highlights ongoing work to provide quality, local, continuing education opportunities for congregational leaders. There will be one final toolbox course in 2021 on transforming conflict with Teresa Latini. The committee remains hopeful that the Older Youth Retreat will be held November 19th through 21st at Bluestone. Any new business that was introduced before lunch will be taken up following committee reports. On page 56, you'll find an evaluation form. Those in attendance will also receive a link following the meeting that will allow them to complete the form electronically. I encourage you to complete this form either the day of the meeting or soon thereafter. The leadership team and staff review these meetings to see how they might be improved and how the presbytery might be of help to our churches and its members. Following the evaluation form, you'll find the worship bulletin. The final section of the packet has flyers related to upcoming events. These include the Small Church Conference in Clarksburg on September 18th, the Bluestone Fall Getaway Retreat October 1 through 3, the Toolbox course Transforming Conflict from the Inside Out on Zoom on October 23rd, and the Presbyterian Youth Triennium, which will be held next summer in July, although now is the time to think about budgeting to assist youth in your congregation to attend. You have now made it through the advanced packet. I hope you will go back and review all of the materials thoroughly before the meeting on the 19th. When the end of the meeting on the 19th arrives, though, please remember that your work is not over as you get in your car to drive home. Your work as a ruling elder, commissioner, or minister member continues as you take what you have learned and observed back to your session so that they too may be informed about the ongoing work of the Presbytery of West Virginia. I look forward to seeing you at Bream on August 19th. If you have comments about this video, please be sure to include them on the evaluation form. Thanks for watching.